We didn't have hot water, but it was still a help.
Oh, yes.
You could heat the water and just dump it in there, and after a while your father connected some hot water.
He was clever. He could do, it was like with Henry, just about, the plumbing, the
Well, he did
electrical.
furnace in the garage. He did all that plumbing himself. All that wiring he did himself.
I didn't know that.
He did it in Los Angeles too. We had kerosene lamps he wired, and her mother didn't like it, the idea, but once she got used to it, she was happy. I'll never forget, I got my first flat iron. I couldn't find enough clothes to iron.
I remember ironing with those that you had to put on the stove.
God.
And you ironed everything in those days. Remember the slips
It was
were
cotton,
Sure. And wash day. God, I'll never remember.
Wash day was to be an awful grind.
All day long, and those tubs, and it would spill on the floor, and then we'd hang the clothes out in the winter, and of course it'd be so stiff, it'd freeze. It's a wonder if we had any clothes left. That breaks the threads.
Sure does.
Boy, I'll never forget the time we had the Halloween party across the road there in the school, and this person came in with, what'd you have on, Pop's underwear or something?
Yeah.
God, everybody
With
was...
a rumble seat.
Oh, God. The guys were so embarrassed when we going to start fooling around or something, pinching your fanny, and they found out it was my mother. Oh, God. And the other thing, we were laughing about that when Chet and Jinx came to the vineyard. Remember the giant we used to have?
I know it.
Dottie used to get up on Chet's shoulders.
I didn't know it used to start the traffic. People would start and look, and what the devil was that?
I had a picture, I had a snapshot, and I can't find it.
I wish we had one of that.
My old album.
That would have been something.
Someday I hope I can go through some of the negatives, because I'd like to see that. The kids would like Jinx and Chet, I know, would like Dottie.
Who thought of that up?
I don't know. I can't remember. And we took Pop's long coat, that long black coat.
Poor Chet must have been sweating in that thing. What time is it?
Oh, it's 12:30. We ought to have some lunch. Mother has been fighting cancer for 8 years. She discovered the lump on her breast by herself in November, and rather than spoil our Christmas holiday season, she did not tell any of us until after the holidays. We took her to the doctor, and he was so alarmed at the size of it that she didn't even go home. We took her right over to the hospital, and the next morning she had her mastectomy. Radical, and they removed her lymph nodes. Her recovery was truly remarkable. Her attitude toward everything was something that the doctors were totally amazed. She had radiation. She came to Amherst and stayed with Henry and me for 6 weeks. It was easier for me having her live with us, having to take her to the hospital every day for her treatments. Then she went back home to Greenfield and recovered there quite well. She traveled, she did her own housework, gardened. In fact, she flew out for Dennis's wedding all the way out to California, so she resumed a very full, active life. Then the cancer spread to other parts of her body, and with treatments, chemotherapy, some were shrunken, some were arrested, some went into remission. It got into her liver and her lungs, and I had told Dr. George Bauer that when the time came that there was no more that they could do for her medically, to please call me at the Vineyard. Well, that day came.
Okay.
And Henry and I packed up all our suitcases, and even to the point of the dryer, knowing what was coming with perhaps a long illness, bedridden illness, and Mom being so independent. We were trying to figure some way that we could move in without her becoming too alarmed. Henry's mother wasn't well at that particular time, so I called my mother and said, gee, Grace isn't too well, and she doesn't have the room for us, which was not true. Could we stay with you so we can be nearer to her in the hospital? And she welcomed that with open arms. So we moved in was it end of October, November it was. November of 82, yeah. November of 82. And we did what we could for her without having her lose her independence. She fell one night and hurt her side quite badly. She was still getting up in the morning, feeding the cat, feeding herself, and dressing herself. Christmas Day was the last day that she wanted to get dressed. The next day she said, I don't feel like getting dressed. So I said, well, don't. So she didn't, and never got out of a nightie and a robe after that. It got to the point where Henry was carrying her from her bedroom to the living room rocking chair, and with his heart condition, I was concerned about his welfare also. It was difficult for me to help her, because even though she was very slim, it was all dead weight, and I do have a bad back. So we finally ordered a hospital bed, and she fought that tooth and nail. She knew that that was the last step, that once she got into the hospital bed, she would never get out. But we said for our benefit, we had to have it. And she lasted a very, very short time. The day she died, she was still very coherent. I called the doctor because she had problems and seemed to be in more pain than we wanted her to have. So we got a prescription for her pain, and he wanted to bring her to the hospital to get rid of some of the excess fluid, and I said no, this is her wish to die at home. So as the afternoon progressed, I realized by her vital signs that the time was very close. So I called members of the immediate family, and Alice and Dottie had spent a couple of nights helping us with Mom, because it was over a month we were not getting any sleep. I mean, just being up with her 24 hours a day was taking a toll on our bodies too. Everybody came in that could, and Dennis and David had been in the day before, and Kevin was getting out of work and had feelings about Grandma, and he called the house and said, can I come see Grandma tonight? And I said, yes, if you want to see her alive, you better fly down. So he came right over and was with her when she died. She was very alert right until the last, I would say the last half hour, and she went comatose. And I put my arms around her shoulders, lifting her head, and she died like Daddy did. She died in my arms. This was 9:40 p.m. Friday, January 7th of 1983, and the funeral was Tuesday, January 10th, 1983.